Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Satan and Coffee. It's a bit of a late episode, and it's going to be a quick one, actually. It's going to be a two-part episode, so we're going to do half of it today and half of it tomorrow. Not tomorrow, but Friday. Because... Oh, what happened? Where did my transition go? My transition has disappeared. Oh, I mean, it also because like my computer thought it would be great to just randomly eject my external drive from my computer, and so yeah, probably a lot of the links have been broken because of that. Anyway, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the show. It's good to see everybody. So yeah, we're back on the blood magic shit. I mean, not back on it. We haven't really talked about blood magic, really, if you think about it. I mean, we did talk about like the whole animal sacrifice thing. We had JS on, and here's some exciting news, everybody. Here's some exciting news. So EA Coetting has agreed to come on the show. Don't have a date yet. We don't have a date yet, but he publicly agreed to come on the show. He was doing a TikTok live, and I happened to jump into it, and told him, I asked him if he would be willing to come on after he saw the show with Garrett, and yeah, so yeah, we are going to have EA Coetting on Satan and Coffee. It's gonna be a fun one. It's gonna be a fun conversation, I think. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Just have to solidify dates. That's pretty much it. That's it. Also, just to let you guys know, I have been trying to publish my book for a month on the whole Kindle direct publishing. I've gone through the process I don't know how many times. Everything seems fine. It doesn't tell me that there's any errors. I go publish my book. I actually just click the button. And it goes into a review, right? And then nothing happens. The book is live on Kindle. It's a Kindle ebook, so if you have access to the ebooks, the Book of Baphomet Conversations with the Horned One is available for Kindle ebook right now. It's been available since January 29th. And still waiting on the paperback to finally go through. So yeah, not sure, what to do with that, right? Like honestly. So yeah, I just want to let you guys know. So we want to do. Okay. So yeah, so it's definitely. I'm just looking at. So I went through their advertising thing. I'm just looking at it right now, like first time looking at it. So, but yeah, like I mean, it's up. The book is up. You can grab it for Kindle. It's on the Kindle. It's an ebook right now. I think I set it up so people can like purchase it and download it like as like a PDF or whatever. But yeah, so that's live. The paperback, I don't know what's going on with it. I really don't. Because it doesn't tell me that there's anything wrong with it. It doesn't tell me that there's something that needs to be changed. It just doesn't publish. So I don't know. So half of the publishing process is done. I'm still fighting with it. It's supposed to be published on the 13th. That's the whole reason why the whole Leora and Pip stuff hasn't come out, because I don't know what this is asking me or why it's doing what it's doing, but hopefully it'll be up soon. I mean, as of right now, I just keep hitting publish and then hoping eventually at some point it'll work. Which is probably not how you're supposed to do it, but whatever. Damn, sorry. All right, so as we like to do, the daily read to see what's going on with the energy for the day. Right. Also, there is an accompanying Oracle deck, but again, like I said, I am still trying to figure out a print-on-demand service for cards, which is apparently a lot harder than books, or T-shirts or things of that nature. So we'll see what happens. With that, but yeah, so yeah, EA Coetting will be on the show. I'm not sure when. Again, like I said, book has been published. You guys can buy it on Kindle. $6.99 on Kindle and $10 flat for paperback. So let's see, the Crimson Sentinel. Interesting. Okay, so we got a few cards that we've gotten in the past already, that have decided to make another appearance. Right. So our first card that we have is over here. There you go, the Crimson Sentinel. Love the artwork. Absolutely adore the artwork. And hopefully this Saturday coming, Mystic said that he'll be actually reading from this deck as well, so it should be interesting to see what his interpretation of it is. This is Crimson Sentinel. So here, I find our energy for the day is be on guard, but also be proud. Don't be on guard and timid. Don't hide yourself. Keep your back straight, your chest out, head up. Be on guard, but make sure that those around you see your power. Make sure that the world around you sees the confidence that you have earned in yourself. Stop hiding who you are from the world. Stop being afraid of what the world is going to think of you. Stop falling into that trap of making yourself smaller for the sake of other people. To be agreeable. No need to start shit. Not saying that either, but allow your confidence to come through. Allow your confidence to show. That second card. Seen this one before, the Abyssal Beast. Right? Again, we're talking about kind of rising up and showing that power, but this is more theatrical. This is allowing the theater to show itself. It's also seeing here, kind of crossing with the first card, is also don't allow people that, like, when people see confidence, they like to try to tear it down because of their own, right, lack of self-confidence. Anytime you try to build something, somebody's always going to try to tear it down, even though even the people that you think that are trying to help you build it, some of those very people might be trying to tear it down, because not inherently because they want it, but because they just don't want anyone else to have it. They don't want other people to have success, which bleeds from their inability to find their own success, to find their own power and process, to build that power. And so they want to take it away from others. Some of them do that in subtle ways, and some of them do that in more direct ways. Be wary of those people. You might run across a couple of them today. And if we look at showing that confidence, watching your back, watching the people around you, allowing the theatrics to kind of come out a little bit, like allowing yourself to kind of revel in that confidence. Come back to the eternal serpent. The dragon. Embodying the dragon once again. We keep getting this. We keep getting this. I think this is like the second read where, you know, we're hitting that. We're hitting that tone with like embody the dragon, right? Like don't just say, do, right? Do what is needed for you to embody the dragon, right? All right, so usually we would read from the other deck as well. That's the read for this morning. I hope that was helpful. Hope you guys got something out of it. But I do have to be quick with this one, the show this morning, because, yeah, reasons. So, blood, will, and consequences, right? So, Grampong. I don't know why I just almost called you Gramprong. I wanted to add an R in there. You know? So, the first part that we're going to talk about when it comes to kind of like the whole blood magic aspect of things, right, is we kind of have to talk about blood as life, lineage, and contract, right? So what we're looking at, right, in this is, so in early societies, like when we look in the past, right, blood carried three functions at once. Three functions at once. Okay. Life. So blood visibly leaves the body and death follows. No abstraction needed, right? So it's just before biology, people still understood that blood loss meant life loss, right? So that direct relationship made blood the most obvious carrier of vitality. Lineage. Bloodlines were literal, not symbolic. Kinship, inheritance, tribal belonging, and legitimacy were all framed in blood, right? To share blood was to share fate. To spill it was to end a line, not just a body. And contract. Blood sealed agreements because it could not be taken back. Spoken oaths could be broken. Written ones could be destroyed. Blood permanently marked the body and the memory of the act, right? So blood oaths across cultures were not prayers, right? They were legal mechanisms. Two parties cut themselves and mingled blood, right? Because betrayal after that point meant cosmic consequence, not just social punishment, right? So blood turns intention into obligation. Why early societies used blood and human sacrifice, right? So again, anytime we talk about this type of shit, like this part usually makes like most people uncomfortable because it refuses kind of like the fantasy that ancient humans were stupid or cruel for fun, right? Because they weren't, right? They were practical. Early societies lived under conditions where infant mortality was high, famine was constant, disease was poorly understood. War meant annihilation, not territory loss. When survival itself was unstable, existential threats demanded existential responses, right? So when we talk historically, human sacrifice wasn't casual, right? It was rare in most cultures. unless of course you're talking like I think it was like the Aztecs, and then almost those motherfuckers were like sacrificing somebody every other week. Targeted and tied to moments where the survival of the group was perceived to be at stake. So, sacrificial kings or chosen figures during agricultural collapse, offerings tied to drought, plague, or invasion, ritual deaths meant to reset the relationship between the human and the cosmic order, right? This wasn't sadism, it was desperation mixed with cosmology. Right. So a key distinction here, though, is like, so they believe the cosmos required balance, not comfort. Right. So when imbalance threatened annihilation, the highest possible cost was offered because lesser offerings were believed insufficient. Right. So when everything is at risk, only the highest currency is considered valid. Right. In these situations. So scarcity, survival, and cosmology. So it's not sadism, where what most people might think. Modern critiques often project modern abundance backward, right? So, and that's kind of lazy. So ancient people lived in scarcity, right? There was a scarcity economy, right? So food was not guaranteed. Weather dictated survival. The death of a few could save many. Blood sacrifice functioned within a worldview where the universe was reciprocal, forces had appetite, balance demanded payment, and cruelty wasn't the goal. Continuation was, right? So many sacrificial victims were honored, not discarded, right? They were prepared, ritually elevated, and believed to carry communal weight into the unseen. That doesn't make it a good thing by modern standards, but it does prove intent matters, right? Again, intention, right? So you don't understand the act if you ignore the world it came from, right? So blood as communal binding, not personal expression, right? And here's where kind of like modern occultism kind of goes wrong with it. Because a lot of people use it as personal expression. They don't use it as like that communal binding, right? It's also, I think it's used way too fucking much. Like, everybody does this thing where, like, you see them all over TikTok and shit like that, where they pricks their finger and puts it on the sigil and shit like that, right? And I look at stuff like that and I apply it to my logic on words. If everyone's your friend, what does it mean to be your friend? Nothing. Doesn't mean anything. If you love everyone, what does it mean to love somebody? Nothing. Right? And I think blood magic is very much the same thing, right? You know, if you're pricking your finger every time you go into ritual 3-4 times a week to charge up some sigils, right? I'm sorry, but not only are you going to have very sore fingers, I honestly believe that compulsive and obsessive usage of that type of magic reduces its meaning and its power, right? Do you have to charge every single sigil before you use it? There's other ways to charge sigils, first and foremost. Second of all, you don't always need a charged sigil, do you? Like, charged sigils are really kind of like, there's specific situations where you really need to kind of like put that a little extra effort into your sigil, right? I'll put it this way. As far as blood magic, like pricking my finger and using my own blood in ritual, I have done it twice. Once many years ago, and The second time, maybe, I want to say maybe a year ago, maybe. Yeah, probably about a year ago now. So twice I've used, blood and ritual. It's not because I don't believe it works, it's because I do believe it works. But if I believe that it works when you save it for the things that you really, really want to have that effect on. Because again, if you just start throwing stuff out there, it doesn't mean anything. The more and more you throw something out there, it doesn't mean anything. We know that words, as practitioners of the craft, regardless of your path, we know that words hold power. We know this. We know psychologically words hold power. We know that, self-deprecation, the brain doesn't understand it, and the body will respond to that self-deprecation. So we know for a fact words have power. Intent has power. But we also know that the more often you use a word or a phrase or something like that, it begins to lose power because you become desensitized to it, right? Now, depending on what we're talking about, one of two things usually happens during desensitization. And what we're looking at in those situations is either your body just believes it and knows it and no longer needs to hear it, and it just becomes integrated as part of you, right? Or it no longer has any effect, right? Like those are one of the two directions that goes in. And so if you keep doing the same things over and over and over and over and over again, I mean, don't get me wrong, repetition does have its own, its own power, but like when you overly use something because you believe that it holds power, it begins to lose power the more that you use it. So it's to say, I have a lot of acquaintances. I only have a few friends. Not everyone is my friend. That is an earned title. You don't get called my friend just because I know you. You're an acquaintance, not a friend. And love is reserved for those that I actually truly love. Right? Because I believe that words have power. I believe that the usage of those words towards people hold power. And so you shouldn't be just doling it out, right? Like, $5 candy, right? A bag of $5 candy, right? It means more than that. You should feel that you mean more than that, right? Because that's another thing. What does it say about you, right? When you go in and you start calling everybody's my friend and I love everybody, what does that say about you? What does that say about like the value that you hold to yourself? Do you value yourself? Do you value that connection to yourself? Or people's connection to you? Should people value their connection to you? Because if you don't value and limit yourself, access to yourself, right? I mean, it makes sense to me. I mean, I don't know, right? So anyway, so historically, blood was never primarily personal, right? So it was communal. Blood sacrifice bound tribe to land, people to gods, present generation to ancestors, right? Living to unborn. Okay. So the act was public, witnessed, and remembered. It created shared consequence. Contrast with modern usage, talking about, blood magic, not killing people. Modern blood magic often centers personal empowerment, aesthetics, or intensity chasing, right? And that's not how blood worked historically, right? And history is important in these situations, okay? Historical value is important. It's one of the things I talked about with JS. Like we talk about lineage, and I don't think a lot of people understood what I meant by when I talk about lineage. the thing is like when you're just trying to chase the aesthetic to look edgy, or you're just trying to make it look more intense than it actually is, or whatever, you run into problems, right? Because you missed the point, right? The point went over your head. Okay. Historically, Blood said, if this fails, we all pay, right? So Blood wasn't about self-expression, it was about shared fate. So the function of it in the occult, right, is, the occult function is why Blood works, right? It strips away culture and myth, and the occult mechanics remain, right? So Blood creates irreversible markers, right? It injures the body, it activates fear and focus, it signals seriousness to the nervous system, it creates memory that does not fade easily. The psyche treats blood loss as non-negotiable, right? That's the point. Blood collapses the symbolic distance, right? Most ritual uses symbols to stand in for consequence. Blood removes the stand-in, right? So that's not a metaphor. It's not a metaphor when you actually have blood coming out of you, right? During ritual, right? The intention becomes physical. The will becomes embodied, and the act cannot be undone. This is why blood has always been dangerous to use casually. It works too well, right? So blood doesn't symbolize commitment, it enforces it. Okay. So blood was never about devotion, it was about commitment that could not be undone. So, an example of when I think it would be appropriate to use blood, right? So, the most recent time that I used it was with the kind of infernal binding ceremony that Dyra and I did. So kind of like I would call our private infernal wedding, right? We used it there on our rings and to each other. And when you make a pact, I think that would be an appropriate situation or time to use blood magic, right? Is when you're going into a pact with an entity, right? Again, because what does it symbolize? What does it enforce? An act that cannot be undone, right? The will becomes embodied, intention becomes physical. It's no longer metaphor. You're no longer speaking metaphorically. You're bringing forth the physicality of it. Something to look at, right? And then so why human sacrifice is no longer serves modern occultism, right? Would be kind of like the next part, because human sacrifice was a part of this, right? And it is interesting to look at, right? Like why, it's no longer practiced. I mean, there's obvious reasons why it's no longer practiced, right? But the biggest one is change social structures, right? So ancient ritual emerged in small interdependent societies, right? So if the tribe failed, everyone failed. There was no anonymity, no safety net, no personal practice separate from communal survival, right? Modern society is the opposite, right? You live among millions of strangers. Your survival does not depend on ritual success, and institutions, technology, and infrastructure absorb existential risk, right? So that alone changes everything, right? In early societies, ritual failure meant famine, invasion, extinction. Authority was earned through consequence, not aesthetic, right? And in modern society, right, ritual failure usually means nothing happens, right? The practitioner goes to work the next morning, right? So, a rain ritual in and agrarian culture directly affected crops. A modern rain ritual is symbolic at best. The stakes are not the same, and pretending they are is self-deception, right? So rituals evolve to meet real pressure, not personal meaning. And then the inside of that is change survival pressures, right? So survival pressure shapes magic, right? So ancient humans faced constant exposure to death, unpredictable food supply, high infant and maternal mortality, violent immediate consequences. And for modern humans, it's psychological stress, social fragmentation, existential anxiety, not starvation, right? That shift in societal pressure matters. Blood sacrifice emerged where life itself was unstable. When death was already present, ritualized death was not taboo. It was contextual, right? So today, death is delayed, hidden, medicalized, and outsourced. So most people in modern societies do not see death regularly. Many have never seen a body die, yet some want to evoke death currents theatrically without understanding their psychological weight. You can't import extreme rites into mild conditions and expect coherence, right? And then there's also like a changed relationship with death as well, right? So ancient people lived alongside death. Bodies were prepared by family. Death happened at home. Graves were nearby. Ancestors were present, not abstract, right? So death was integrated into life. Modern society does the opposite. Death is institutionalized. Bodies are removed immediately. Language is sanitized. Rituals are outsourced to professionals, right? Rituals about body preparation, things like that, right? All of these things matter. All of these changes matter to the contextual coherence of how death was viewed in modern society and ancient society, right? And it is a relationship with death. Make no mistake about that. Ancient societies had a relationship with death, which is why things like Santa Muerte are so powerful, right? Is because there is still, there's still a remnants of that relationship that, these societies once had with death. Now we talk about it, but aesthetically, right? One of the things that really irritates me about a lot of people that I see talking about Santa Muerte, right, La Santísima Muerte, is it's theatrical. It's it's aesthetic. It's cool. It's edgy, right? Like you take something that looks like the Grim Reaper and has a skull face and is the essence of death, and it's edgelord shit. It really fucking is. It's edgelord shit. I'm not saying Santa Muerte is edgelord shit, but most of the people that talk about Santa Muerte, they don't have the respect or reverence when they talk about Santa Muerte. So I live in Mexico, for those of you that don't know. I think most of you do know, and I've talked to a lot of people that are, through lineage, family, many generations, work with Santa Muerte. And here's the thing. If you go to like an esoteric shop, a Santeria, right, here in Mexico, they're not going to tell you to work with Santa Muerte. They're not going to. They actually advise against it. They're not going to stop you, and they'll sell you all the stuff that you need to work with her, But if you ask them directly, hey, should I do that? They would tell you no. And the funny thing is most people, especially like for some reason Americans as well, like Americans are just like I'm a proud American. Don't get me wrong. Like I love being an American. I love the fact that I'm American. But most Americans are really stupid, Like when it comes to like shit like Santa Muerte and stuff like that, like they talk like they know what the fuck it is that they're actually talking about, and because they've read a couple of books or they've watched a couple of YouTube videos and stuff like that. I'm not telling people not to work with Santa Muerte. I mean, you do whatever the fuck you want to do, right? But Santa Muerte is definitely a current you don't want to be fucking with. Like, I mean, just like, I'm just going to put it out there, right? You know, like, there are aspects of Santa Muerte that people completely fucking ignore. Like, I've noticed this. I've noticed when people talk about Santa Muerte, like, they don't, or even like the death current in general, like whatever entity it is you're working with that goes through the death current, like, it's fashionable. You can tell that it's fashionable, right? It's like a fashionable thing that people do, right? I mean, I don't know. It's just, it does kind of irritate me. Question whether the modern person has a relationship with death other than fear. I don't think most modern people do have a relationship with death outside of fear. Right? I mean, and it's okay to fear death. I mean, it's not a problem. Like, I mean, here's the thing. I know eventually at some point I'm going to die. I know that for a fact. My brain hasn't rationalized it, though, because I'm not there, right? I'm not at its doorstep. So naturally, I'm afraid of it because there are things that I want to finish in my life. That obviously, if, you know, I'm dead, there's no more life to finish. It's already done. And I don't have that choice. I don't. Like, that's the thing. Like, it doesn't matter how many times you go to the gym, how healthy you think you eat. You know, like, you don't have a choice of when it happens. It just happens. And that's it. There's nothing you can do about it. There's no control on how. There's no control on when, where, nothing. Just the looming fact that we know that it's going to happen. And anyone says that if anyone says that they're not afraid to die, right? I accept the fact that I'm going to die. I accept that. Still fucking afraid of it, right? And anyone says that they're not afraid to die is either a psychopath or lying to you. That's just a fact. Sorry, but, you know, sorry, but not sorry. You know, But see, that's talking about death as like an entity. Death is like as an object, as a noun, not as a verb, right? So I've never feared death is speaking about death as a noun, as an object, right? The true statement is like, if you're to say, I've never feared dying. No, you shouldn't fear death. Death is an object, you know, is an object, right? You know, it's a thing, right? It's not, you know, a verb. It's not an action. The act of dying is so much different than death. So, you know, that's the differential. If you think about it, psychologically, we do that to ourselves, right? When you talk about death as an object, it's something that's tangible, right? Or like, at least psychologically speaking, right? And it removes kind of like the finality of it. But when you look at death, how you should, at least in my opinion, how you should look at death, you know, as the act of dying, that is a whole other thing. It's not the same thing. We're not talking about the same thing in that context, right? Grateful for growing up on a farm because exactly. You know, and I think that what people are afraid of, most people aren't afraid of death. Most people are afraid of dying, which are two totally different statements, right? To say that I'm not afraid of death and I'm not afraid of dying, those are two totally different statements. And yes, they are definitely connected to each other. You know, so I think that, again, language is important here, right? The vernacular, the semantics are important in the conversation, right? Because most people that talk about death as something that is objectified and in front of them as an object, Santa Muerte, for example, becomes that objectification of death, right? It becomes something that you can see, something you can visualize. Then it becomes controllable to some degree, right? Right? It's not, but psychologically speaking, the moment that we objectify something, it becomes controllable, right? And once we feel like we have some level of control over that thing, we remove the fear from it. Dying as an action is something that you cannot control. There's no objectification of dying. And when you're honest with yourself, yeah, I'm afraid of dying. Am I afraid of death? Not really. Am I afraid of dying? Fuck yeah. Or rather, I just don't want to. I mean, that's the thing. I don't want to die. At least not yet. You know, and so, yeah, I mean, I also think that that's why, like, health-wise, like, you know, we're dying so much older than we usually would because of modern medical advances and things like that. Right? I mean, average life expectancy probably like 200 years ago, I think was like, what, 50? And now it's like 75, 85? At least like by US statistics. I think that that's why there's so much suffering at the end of life. Because we have forced our lives to go so much further than we would have in the past, that I think that that's nature balancing itself out. I think that that's why there's usually so much suffering at the end of life now, because we are living longer than we probably should, right? So the farm thing, yeah, I mean, I grew up in the country, so, you know, I'm a hunter, you know, usually just deer hunting. I mean, I've done duck hunting a couple of times, and rabbit, but deer is usually just the main thing that I go hunting I go hunting for. So, yeah. Anyway, guys, I would love to continue this, but part 2 on Friday, right? Blood, will, and consequences, because there's a lot more to cover here. There's a lot more that I want to get into about this. So, yeah. I hope you guys enjoyed the show. You guys are fucking amazing. Thank you so much for being here. And as always, hail thy fucking self. I'll see you in the next one. Peace the fuck out.